Okay, what we are seeing here is everyday scenarios with something that I am now calling the Universal Mag build. The Universal Mag build is basically the mag that I have been using for the longest time. It is, of course, another triple augment build. Here we are in the simulacrum with Mag, and basically we're going to go up against these level 100 corrupted heavy gunners. First off, I'm just going to go grab some energy like so. And strip all of their armor like so. And of course, with my bow being so good, or if we bring them all into a magnetized bubble, use whatever weapon you want. Awesome. Drop the magnetized bubble if you want to also kill those enemies even faster. And we can also do the same thing with even stronger enemies. So let's go up against some Gok Stad officers like so, and we will bring their level up to level 145. Awesome. Fantastic. Let's drop the turrets down. And then the same idea. One more time. And now all of their armor is taken out. Grab that energy orb. And of course you can also drop the nuke from the magnetized bubble if you wish. So this build is really powerful. Let's have a look at it. Here is the build. Now, this Universal Mag build is named as such for two very big reasons. The first thing is that any aura is absolutely perfectly fine. If you want to use an aura such as Steel Charge because you're into melee attacks, if you want to use Growing Power because you're into Power Strength, you want to use Swift Momentum, you want to use Combat Discipline because, I don't know, reasons I guess, then you can use any of the auras that you want. I personally prefer Speed Holster because being able to swap weapons is, I think, really good, but whatever aura you want is absolutely valid for this build. The other thing about the Universal Mag build is that any Xless mod is perfectly fine as well. Right now I'm using Prime Sure-Footed because I feel like not being knocked down is a really good thing, but if you want to use something like Lightning Dash or Ice Spring or Firewalker or Toxic Flight or hell, even Preparation, you can fit those mods, no worries, because of the way that I have polarized this mag. Or if for whatever reason you don't have Prime Sure-Footed, you can always use Handspring as well. If you want extra power strength, you can go for Power Drift. Basically, any Xless mod, any aura, absolutely within your wheel of ideas to use. Now, let's get into the meat of this build. The first thing that you will probably notice is the 155% power strength that is achieved with the use of Umbral Intensify and Umbral Vitality put together, because of course the Umbral set bonus works like that. Now you may be thinking, Umbral Vitality on a mag, that seems a little bit weird, doesn't it? Using a health mod on mag is probably not the best idea, and to be honest, if DE were to release something called Umbral Redirection, then I would 100% swap that with this particular mod and not use Umbral Vitality anymore. Until then, I will just stick to Umbral Vitality because Umbral Steel Fiber makes even less sense. Now, the 155% power strength is mainly in service of Fracturing Crush. So Fracturing Crush is a crush augment that I don't see a lot of people use. Survivors have their armor decreased by 50% and are unable to move for 7 seconds. Now, with this build, that brings the armor reduction to 77%. Now, Fracturing Crush has a cap. The cap of armor reduction is 80%, which can only be achieved with a 160% power strength. Of course, you can achieve that if you use something like Growing Power on your aura or something like Power Drift on your Xless mod, if you so desire. I personally don't think that extra difference is going to make that big of a deal in the long run. I'd rather save those 2 slots for something a little bit more useful in the utilitarian side. So that's why I'm using 155% power strength with Fracturing Crush. Now, the other thing that's worth looking at is the 155% power duration. There's not a lot of mag builds that actually use positive power duration, but this is going to be one of them. Now, the thing about positive power duration on mag is that there's 2 very important augments that I think need to be used when you do that, and that is both Magnetized Discharge and Counterpulse. Why is that? Counterpulse is why you want to use the extra power duration. Counterpulse with extra power duration means that you can basically stun enemies for a very long period of time, and we basically achieve achieve that with our demonstrations. And Magnetized Discharge is how you can use that extra power duration, because with the extra power duration, we currently have a magnetized bubble that lasts for a grand total of 23.25 seconds. That is really bloody long. And what that means is that if you're not using something like magnetized duration, if you happen to not be in an endless mission or a mission that seems to be flooded with enemies coming left, right, and center, then unfortunately that magnetized bubble is going to burst and do nothing in the end. So being able to control when you actually get to burst that magnetized bubble, I think is an extremely useful tool. So that's why we're using both magnetized discharge and counterpulse. And finally, there is also the stretch, which of course gives us 145% range. Now, this actually works in tandem with magnetized discharge because both of them give that extra 45% range on the magnetized bubble. That's why if you were to use the magnetized bubble along with magnetized discharge plus stretch, you may notice that your magnetized bubble is pretty damn big, and that is really, really useful. Of course, there is only one augment left that I have not used on this build, and that is going to be the pull augment, Greedy Pull. I don't really think this is all that useful, but pull is still a useful ability for utility purposes. You may notice this in some of the footage later on. Of course, not only is this build really good at taking out armor, this build is also really good at just taking out enemies in general. So let's go up against a more balanced diet of enemies. So we're looking at corrupted heavy gunners, bombards, lancers, butchers, crewmen, and mowers as well. So we're going to actually not use my bow this time. We're actually going to use my Stenoid Gamma Core. First, we're going to group up the enemies as much as we can. We're going to use one Fracturing Crush and one Polarize. That pretty much knocks out all of the enemies inside that are like too squishy. Like so. And we're not even using a particularly better weapon. On the off chance we feel like we need to stun these enemies, we can always use Counterpulse like so. And then just kill them. Like so. As well as Counterpulse being able to strip armor. That is why I use both Fracturing Crush and Counterpulse together. It also means that I don't really need to worry about something like, oh, I don't know, Corrosive Rejection. In typical fashion, enemies with a lot of armor, their armor gets stripped really, really quickly. And a quick side note on that, you don't necessarily need to strip everyone's armor to the absolute minimum, to the point where they don't have any armor at all. You could actually just use Fracturing Crush to knock out about 77% of their armor, and sometimes that's actually enough. You don't need to go all the way. Now, another thing that makes this build universal is that you don't actually need a specific weapon in order to synergize with this build. It synergizes with itself perfectly fine. So, against these level 100 corrupted heavy gunners, we will put them in a magnetized bubble. Let's use one Fracturing Crush, two Fracturing Crush. We don't even necessarily need the second Fracturing Crush, real talk. And then, like so, we have basically nuked all of those corrupted heavy gunners. And the same thing can be happening without even stripping their armor as well. So, here we have the same level 100 corrupted heavy gunners. And now we're just going to put them in a magnetized bubble, and now they're going to try and attack us from inside that magnetized bubble. Let's all point and laugh at these foolish corrupted heavy gunners for thinking that they could actually do anything whilst inside this magnetized bubble. But hands-off approach, completely hands-off approach. We're just going to wait until the magnetized bubble is about to pop, and then just about right now, let's use magnetized discharge, and boom! All of those corrupted heavy gunners have succumbed to a very deadly explosion. And that's basically the idea when it comes to the universal mag build. This mag build synergizes so well with itself, with its enemies, that you don't need to use something like the Penta. You don't need to use something like the Maradetron. You can use any bloody weapon you wish. Of course, certain weapons are going to function a little bit better inside the magnetized bubble, but like we demonstrated, do you really need that? I don't think so. I personally prefer to use the bow because I really like bows. But if you like to use something like a shotgun, go nuts. If you like to use something like a flamethrower, like the Ignis Wraith, go nuts, because this build is universal. Now, there's also one thing that this build is really good at taking out, and that is, of course, Sentients. One of the toughest enemies in existence outside of things that exist in the Steel Path. So, let's go up against some level 100 Battleists. So, we'll put them in a magnetized bubble again, and it's one Fracturing Crush, one Polarize, and they have no more armor, which does make it a lot easier to kill them all of a sudden. And even this singular one right here, and if we need to stun them in any way, shape, or form, we can always use Counterpulse as well. Okay, what I'm seeing on the screen is very, very strange. weird demonstration against the Sentients, but that will basically do. And against all of the Sentients that exist in Railjack at the very end in the Sentient Outpost, it is often a rather easy affair, especially with the fact that when Sentients die, especially Battlist, you can actually pick something up that gives you all of your energy back, so that is really, really helpful against them. And that's pretty much it. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments below. Do you think you'll be using the Universal Mag build as well? Let me know in the comments. The one thing about the Universal Mag build is that I am using, of course, 2 Umbral Former. If you don't feel like you want to use that 2 Umbral Former because Mag is probably not the Warframe that you would, by all definitions, define as your main Warframe, fair enough. You can actually do a similar looking build using Transient Fortitude. Just keep in mind that you will be losing out on a bit of power duration as a result of that particular build. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more Warframe content, and until next time, I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye!